Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell you scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse wherever you stream podcasts. Just be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. The Red Treehouse is dedicated to my dad. I love you, Pop. With Halloween just around the corner, I'm bringing you the scariest stories to keep you up at night, including true Ouija board nightmares. I've said this before, but I've always been too scared to mess with a Ouija board. And I know that a lot of folks will just say to me, "It's just a toy, there's nothing to be afraid of." But listen, I watched The Exorcist at 9 years old, and ever since then I've been entirely too chicken shit to try it. Maybe one day, but definitely not today. And the stories I'm about to tell you have only reinforced my decision to stay away. In this episode of the Red Treehouse, I'm going to share true Ouija board nightmares. Is it possible that messing with a Ouija board opens a portal to a supernatural world and invites potentially dark, malevolent spirits into ours? I'll share the stories. You decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. True Ouija board nightmares. Story 1. The first and only time I ever used one, I was a teenager playing on it with a friend on my back porch. I didn't know of anyone who had died really, except I remembered from an old photo on the wall, a great aunt called Neil. The name Neil stuck with me because it was a boy's name. So I try to talk to Great Aunt Neil, but when I speak, I say without hesitation or control, "Aunt Connie." I thought, that's weird, I don't have an Aunt Connie. I try again and say, "I'm trying to speak with," and mentally say the word Neil, "Aunt Connie." It was an involuntary response. Very weird, but we moved on and kept playing. When my mom got home from running errands, she asked how our game was going, and I replied, "It's fine. Except I keep trying to talk to Great Aunt Neil, but kept saying Connie," which is so weird because I don't have an Aunt Connie. I still remember my mom's face in that moment. It turns out I did have an Aunt Connie. She was a baby who died of sudden infant death syndrome decades before I was born. My mom almost named me after her. I went on to have extreme paranormal experiences that continue to this day actually. I think it opened a door that I haven't been able to close. The scariest things that have ever happened to me were from when I was a moody 15 to 18-year-old girl that seemed to really energize my surroundings, and lots of scary things happened. I saw people, heard my name whispered in my ear at night multiple times, heard footsteps daily, and heard a voice mimic my father's and walk around the kitchen. That one convinced me that we were broken into, and I stayed outside until my boyfriend came to get me. Of course, there was nobody there. My brother moved back into the family house after college, and confirmed he also heard a voice mimic our father's and walk around the kitchen. He didn't offer this info. I had to pull it out of him over dinner years later. We independently experienced this and didn't know it. In college, I saw a girl standing over my roommate's bed in the middle of the night. I woke up the next day and was like, "Hey, who was that?" Roomie was like, "Oh hell no." She and I still talk about it today. We were on a sorority hall at the time, so I dismissed it initially. It only hit me later that I didn't recognize her or see her legs. The other weirdest thing in college was someone kept getting into bed next to me. Never touched me, but the mattress went down with their weight. That one spooked me. Story 2. This was late summer 2011. I'm in an EU country, so none of this was in English. I was 15. Me and my friend played with a Ouija board. I drew up the quote-unquote board on a large piece of paper, lit the candles, and entered a meditative state because I was the conduit for the experience. We used a small shot glass turned upside down. I don't remember the first question, or my reaction when it first moved. We were sitting on the floor in my room with the board on a rectangular subwoofer acting as a small table. We placed only the tip of our fingers on the glass, resting. His at 12 o'clock and mine at 6. Had one of us moved our fingers to try to influence the glass, it would simply rotate in an awkward way, which we tried after. We asked many questions to the entity, lifting up the glass and whispering into it, "Is there someone that wants to communicate with us?" Then placing it down again on our designated start circle. The glass moved to yes. We asked for a name, and so followed a series of questions and answers. Lars died in 1947. He had no connection to the building. I don't recall if we asked him something more, but after that I said farewell and gave my thanks, as I felt it to be too mundane at the time. I then asked this very question, starting with 6 all the way up to 9. When I reached 9, it moved to no instead of the previous yes, so we settled for 8. Is there someone from the 8th dimension that we can communicate with? Yes. What's your name? ONKU. How old are you? It then proceeds to move to the drawn-up number pad with 0 to 9, and quickly directed the glass across 6 figures starting with 4, 3, then so on. Meaning, it was over 400,000 years old. Me and my friend then asked the entity a series of ridiculous, and to us, fascinating questions at the time. Some personal, some scientific. It was all well and good. The communication was impressive to me. The glass moved with a sharp and clear intent for each answer, like someone grabbed the base of the upside-down glass and swiftly moved it to each letter, sometimes spelling words so fast we couldn't keep up and lost some meaning. But I wanted something more. Can you show us a visual sign? Yes. I didn't want anything happening inside my room, so I asked, can you show us outside if we go out on the balcony? Yes. Should we go outside now? No. We asked some more questions unrelated, and after about 5 minutes or so, I asked again, is it time for us to go outside now? Yes. Me and my friend stood up and went out to the balcony in a, all right, don't know what to expect, but here we go, type of attitude. It was almost bright outside. The time was 4 a.m. in mid-August. The streetlights were off, but it was still early dawn. From our vantage point of a second-floor apartment, we noticed what we first thought was a rock behind a small shed across the road, to the right of the resident parking lot. We then realized it was a black cat. It simply sat there, mesmerized by something behind the shed, out of our view. It then moved to the left, and our eyes followed it, until it was straight ahead of us. Just as it sat down under one of the cars, a white orb of light appeared about 6 feet above the ground. It appeared out of nowhere. The orb itself was about the size of a basketball. The light was solid and pure. It was white, but did not reflect. It wasn't bright in the sense that it was fuzzy. It was bright like it was a puncture of matter/space-time. It made a quick floating swoosh and was gone just as quickly as it had appeared. When it was gone, I looked at my friend to my left, and he looked at me, stunned with his mouth open, literally. We looked towards the same spot again, and it almost instantly appeared, like a confirmation that we did indeed see what we saw. This time, it performed a longer swoosh and came from the right instead, We stood amazed for about 10 minutes, then went back inside. Was the orb of light the sign? I asked. Yes. It was never really scary. It was just a feeling of wonder. The last time I did it was in 2014. I've never seen anything like that orb. Story 3. Story time. This happened in college, mid-80s. My best friend, who was not yet then my roommate, and I got to playing around with a homemade Ouija board. D, my friend, made it out of basic notebook paper, with a straw as a planchette. Broke college days. So much fun. We got in touch with two spirits who claimed to be from World War II, Jonathan and Wade. Being the dumb college kids we were, we begged them to send us a sign. They didn't want to, said it would cost a lot of energy, and might open a door to other less good spirits. No, we said, send us a sign. So we say goodbye, go to sleep, wake up, go out and run errands. Then we return to the dorm room and find a message light is blinking on our answering machine. We scroll through and find one message in the middle that says, Wade loves Katie. We knew no Wades. No one in Dee's family, in my family, is named Wade. We had no friends, no professors, no fellow students named Wade. And so we proceeded to freak right out. Then we replayed it and kept freaking out some more because, oh my God, this must be their sign. Then I had the bright idea to bring over our best male buddy and let him hear it. He lived across the way in the other dorms. Dee and I run downstairs. She runs and gets Jay, and we run back upstairs. The message lights are still blinking, so we go to play the messages, and that particular message from Wade in the middle is gone. It never came back. Cue more freaking out right there. And then cue a stern warning from Jay about messing with Ouija boards. Dee and I kept doing it, but I noticed my hands going cold all the way up to my elbows. I felt drained, like I had no energy. Then one weekend, my roommate went home. I went out, returned home around dusk, walked in, and the dorm was freezing cold. In May, in the deep south. I walk in and saw at the window a giant hand that knocked 3 times. Through the glass. I took one huge step back, said nothing, thought nothing, turned off the light, locked the door, ran down to Dee's dorm room, and immediately began freaking out again. I told Dee, I'm spending the night here, even if I have to sleep on the floor. We relaxed. Then I suddenly realized, oh shit, I need my contact solution and clothes. We have to go back. Dee said to give it an hour or 2 more, so we did. And then we went back in. The room was completely normal. No heaviness, no freezing temperatures. Dee and I ripped up the homemade Ouija board, clipped the straw planchette into pieces, and never did it again. I know what I saw. I saw a giant hand knocking on my window, through the glass. It moved the window blinds on the inside. And the scariest part is that we lived on the 3rd floor. Something wanted in. Never again. Story 4. Okay, so I tried multiple times to play the Ouija board, but it only worked 2 times. The first time was with my sister 3 years ago. We waited 40 minutes long before getting a response. We asked simple questions like, what is your name? Or how old are you? Then we asked if our dead father was here. And with no surprise, the entity said yes, and I asked him to be sure. If you are really my dad, then how did you used to call us when we were little? He got it right, and I was shook. Then I was like, no, maybe the entity can read into our minds to get the answers. And then I asked him what the message was that he wanted us to know. And he said, "I love you all so much." I didn't know if I had to be scared or happy or sad, but I was really confused, and I asked multiple times if it was my sister who moved the cap. We used a bottle cap as a planchette. But she said no, and she was more terrified than me, and she said she didn't want to talk about this anymore. But here is the weird part. After we finished the session, we decided me and my sister were going to sleep together because we were super shocked and still scared. And then I remember my sister telling me that she felt her body burning. It was really weird. And then I just told her that it was only in your head. Simply don't worry about it. But then I started to feel the exact same sensation around my hands and my arms. I couldn't believe it. I remember asking the entity if he was okay with the candle that we placed next to the board, and he didn't like it. So maybe that's related. I don't really know. Okay, so here is my other experience. I remember I was with my friend a few months ago at my house, and we wanted to try for the third time the Ouija board, because the first 2 times it never really worked. So we started playing with it, and nothing really happened. Then, we had this idea of communicating with spirits through flames. Let me explain. We had 2 candles. If the spirit wanted to say yes, the right flame moved, and if he wanted to say no, then the left flame moved. So I think it worked, but I'm not 100% sure if it was really a spirit, even though we closed all of our windows to be sure. Anyway, I wasn't really satisfied with the result, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try it alone, which is absolutely not recommended. So I waited for my friend to leave, and then I tried. And before even touching the bottle cap, I knew I was going to have a quick response. I don't know why, but I knew it deep down, and I felt a ton of fear. But I asked if someone was here, and the bottle cap moved so quickly, I was so shook. It never happened to me before. Usually I had to wait almost an hour to get an answer. It was like the entity felt more confident by the fact that I was alone, and so much less powerful, and so much more vulnerable. I asked the entity its name, which was pretty weird. It sounded like a Latin name that I will try to search in my notes because I'm pretty sure I wrote it down. He told me that he was 3,000 years old, and some other stuff that I don't really remember. The only thing that I do remember clearly is that when I told him goodbye and stopped the session, I had to sit down because my heart was beating so fast and I felt like I was going to die. I had never felt this sensation before. I tried to call everyone, my mom, my sister, my friend, but no one answered. I was about to call the ambulance when finally my friend called me back, and she told me that I shouldn't have done that alone. She helped me calm down and get back to my normal state. And from that day forward, I swore I would never play with a Ouija board again. Story 5. Once my uncle told me about a time he and his friends played with a Ouija board at his friend's house. There were 5 of them, including my uncle. Mind you, this was during the 80s when he was a teenager. One of his friends brought a Ouija board over, and despite their skepticism, they went downstairs into the basement to play it. The basement walls had mirrors lined on both sides. None of them believed in the paranormal, so they were taking everything pretty lightly. They turned off the lights and started asking stupid questions like, "What color of underwear am I wearing? What time is it where you are?" and the likes. After a good 30 minutes or so, they started to get bored since there were no answers coming through. My uncle was about to remove his hand from the planchette and go back upstairs when one of his friends asked, "Is heaven and hell real? Have you seen God?" He asked it jokingly. Then he recalled hearing some sort of static, and the planchette began to move, and at this point everyone started flipping out and laughing nervously. The planchette moved to random numbers, though my uncle doesn't recall what those numbers were. He remembers there were a lot of zeros. The planchette was moving really fast, and everyone was as confused as the person next to them, because they knew there was no way someone in the group was moving it so quickly and randomly. "Guys, stop! Guys, stop!" one of his friends yelled. Everyone took their hands off the planchette and watched as it stopped for a brief moment and glided over to the letter Z. Everyone was frozen and didn't really know what to do. My uncle said he had so much adrenaline that he freaked out and yelled, "Whoever you are, I'm not fucking scared of you." Suddenly, there was a loud bang on the wall behind him, and the light began to flicker like crazy. He turned his attention to the mirrors on the walls and saw what looked like a really large, mangled dog with a huge mouth and burning red eyes in one of the mirrors for what he said was like a split second. It was clear as day, and it struck so much fear into my uncle that he developed a really bad fear of big dogs when he used to love them as a kid. He screamed, and everyone just ran like hell up the stairs. There was a loud crash, and my uncle closed the basement door and locked it as soon as everyone was out. The next morning, his parents inspected, and one of the mirrors was smashed, but still intact, and the light bulb had exploded. His friend's parents were pissed, especially when they found the board. He never told his friends what he saw down there until they were out of college. My uncle doesn't scare easily. Even when he was young, he always tried to be the guy with the biggest balls. The macho alpha, he would call it. Even today, he has this look on his face every time he tells this story. It's really unlike my uncle to get so serious when he is usually a pretty laid-back, humorous guy. Story 6. I have a story. It was move-in week my freshman year of college. For those of you that don't know, people who live on campus at American universities typically move in a week before classes start. The week is full of activities geared towards getting students involved and making friends. It was maybe my third day there, and my boyfriend, now my husband, and I were walking down the hall when a group of people called out through an open door to ask if we wanted to hang out. I was pretty eager to make friends, so I said yes, and we went in. They were setting up a Ouija board to play and asked if I wanted to play with it. I said no, but I'd watch. My mom had her own Ouija board story she told me when I was growing up, and it was enough to make me know not to mess with it. Anyway, they start up and the planchette is moving rapidly. And when I say there's no way someone was moving it, I mean there's no way someone could keep up because it was jerking so much, people's hands were struggling to stay on. The entity on the other side was jealous that one of the girls touching the planchette's boyfriend was touching her. It told us that it was a little boy who died falling out of a wagon during westward expansion, that its mother killed it by accident because she didn't notice he had fallen and rolled over him. Eventually it said goodbye, and the group took a short bathroom break. When they returned, they started a new session and asked, who in the room is in touch with the spirits? Because apparently one person who is in touch has to be touching the planchette for it to work. The response was the nickname my family called me. I never introduced myself by this name, and hadn't actually introduced myself when I walked in the room because they were already starting a session. One of the girls turned her head and goes, "Who the fuck is blank?" And I screamed. I walked the hell out of that room and never went back. Looking back, I think whatever was on the other side of that board knew I was apprehensive and wanted to mess with me. I know for sure that they weren't speaking with the little boy, because I don't believe anything good would reach out via Ouija, and what seems more innocent and unassuming than a child. My mom never told me what was said to her and her friend through the board, just that her friend's mom found it in the bottom of her dresser and threw it out. Then it showed back up. She did it again. It came back. She chopped it up. It came back again. She burned the thing, and the board came back with the outline of it scorched into the bottom of the dresser drawer. After that, they moved the dresser to an outside storage room and left it when they moved. Story 7. When I was 12, a few girlfriends and I were using a Ouija board while hanging out at my best friend's house. We asked a bunch of questions that I don't really remember the answers to, except for the fact that the board said one girl would die from murder. She is still alive today. The story I am about to tell you is what I will never forget. When it came time for us to ask questions about me, I asked who I would marry, how many kids I would have, how I would die, and when. The board spelled out a guy's name that I did not know, and said I would marry him and have 2 boys. My best friend scoffed. "Yeah, right. Give us his phone number." We laughed, but it spelled out the number. It was in our local area code. So she wrote the number down on a piece of paper, grabbed the phone, and called it. This was years before cell phones. We all crowded around the handset to listen. A woman answered, and my friend asked for the guy by name. A sweet-sounding woman on the phone said he wasn't home, and asked if my friend wanted to leave a message. We all freaked out, and my friend slammed the phone down. We were giggling and freaking out at this crazy coincidence, as young girls are apt to do. The board also said I would die of fever at 74. We all thought that was weird too. I remember 12-year-old me thinking, who dies of a fever? Dumb, I know, but that is what I thought. I don't remember much else about what happened with the board beyond that, as what happened afterwards overshadowed everything else. Weird things started happening in my best friend's house when I was over, and they were really frightening. I won't go into it too much, but it was really dark and we knew we had messed up by playing with that board. Fast forward 2 years later, I start dating my first real boyfriend. His name was the same as the name of the guy the board said I would marry. Coincidence, right? Wrong. When my best friend was packing up to move, she found the piece of notebook paper in the box with the Ouija board. It was my boyfriend's number. They were not friends. There is no way she could have known it, written it down, and played it off. We were both freaked out. I told my boyfriend we had been dating about a year at this point, and we told his mom about it. She said she remembered a weird call from a couple years back where girls were giggling and hung up. This coincidence bothered her badly, and I wish we'd never told her. She was a very religious preschool teacher with a sweet voice. She was a great lady. Unfortunately, I did not marry him. We dated for years, and I really thought we would get married. But I broke it off and moved away during a difficult time in my life. He eventually married someone else, with whom he has 2 sons. I never had any children. Ouija boards are bad news. I don't know how or why they work, and some of the answers were off in my case. But what was correct, and the weird things that happened in my friend's house afterwards, bother me sometimes, even 25 years later. I would never, ever touch one again. What did you think of these scary Ouija board nightmares? Comment or email redtreehousepod@gmail.com. As we turn down the lights on this episode, make plans to join me next time as I read The Cold Embrace by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.